that Diana, Princess of Wales, has been killed in a car accident and that her partner, Dodi Fayed, has also been killed. They were apparently being pursued by paparazzi on 2 motorcycles.
Over the course of many years, the terrible death of Princess Diana has been recounted from the point of view of the royal family, the media, and the general people. Now, however, Spencer, the brother of Princess Diana, is releasing previously unknown information, moments that were never mentioned, and truths that question all that people believed they understood about the situation. Why did the funeral procession cause William and Harry, Diana's sons, to experience such a great deal of pain? What took place behind closed doors when the royal family was introduced to the news of her passing for the first time? Come along with us as we unearth the shocking truth about what Diana's brother has disclosed to us. Funeral procession of Princess Diana. On September 6, 1997, the entire globe came to a complete and utter halt. The streets of London were lined with millions of spectators, while nearly 2.5 billion people across the world watched the event on their television screens. An occasion that will never be forgotten in the annals of British history was the funeral of Princess Diana, which was a moment of collective sadness. But out of all the images of that day that were filled with anguish, there was one that stood out more than any other. Prince William and Prince Harry, 2 young boys, are seen going behind the coffin when their mother is laid to rest. Seeing that was a terrible experience. As the audience wept around them, William, who was only 15 years old, and Harry, who was only 12 years old, marched with peaceful, somber faces. Every step they took was accompanied by the pressure of the burden of sadness, obligation, and anticipation that they were carrying. The image would come to characterize their upbringing, and it would continue to plague Harry for many years to come. One thing that the majority of people were unaware of at the time was that this was never their option. Was that the individual that put up the most of a fight against it? Specifically, their uncle Charles Spencer. There is something that you are about to see that will crush your heart, so continue watching to find out why. Diana Spencer is the younger brother of Charles Spencer, the guy who had grown up alongside her, and the one person who knew the anguish that she had endured while being a member of the royal family. Upon receiving the news from the funeral committee that Diana's sons would be participating in the procession, his response was immediate and unwavering. "I never have." Spencer claims that he was having a conversation with a courtier at Buckingham Palace, with whom he was discussing the arrangements for the burial when the plan was casually disclosed to him. By itself, the concept astonished him. It was inconceivable to him that 2 little boys, who were still in the midst of their agony, would be paraded in front of the entire world. His refusal was unequivocal. Having recalled this, Spencer stated that she would have never wanted them to act in this manner. His arguments, however, were met with astonishment and opposition. In response, the palace gave a straightforward response: "The matter has been settled." However, Spencer did not give up without a fight. Through his efforts, arguments, and demands, he pushed for the proposal to be rethought. He emphasized that it was cruel, needless, and fundamentally unnatural to force children to walk behind their mother's coffin while cameras zoomed in on their every expression. He explained that this was a terrible and unnecessary practice. However, his comments were not heard by anyone. At that point, the falsehood emerged. During the course of the conversation, Spencer was informed that William and Harry were interested in carrying out the task. Everything was different for him after that. This is something that he would not interfere with if it were their decision. They would not be coerced into doing something that they did not want to do. After some hesitation, he decided to let the situation go. However, after a plethora of years, the truth was ultimately revealed. It was stated by Prince Harry that they had never been given the opportunity to make a decision. Simply put, they had been instructed on what to do. When Harry was 12 years old, he did not have the ability to refuse. Orders were obeyed by him. Later, Spencer came to the realization that he had been misled, as he had previously assumed that he was honoring their wishes. Without realizing it, he had voluntarily resigned for something that, if he had been aware of the truth, he would have never permitted. An overwhelming sense of sorrow pervaded the morning of the burial. There were people holding flowers, handwritten cards, and images of the princess whom they had loved so dearly. The streets were lined with people who were grieving. It was a strange feeling in the air, one that was heavy with loss, shock, and bewilderment. Then they made their appearance. While walking beside Prince Charles, Prince Philip, and the 2 sons, Charles Spencer was also present. William and Harry were the subjects of the camera's close-ups. Their eyes were positioned in a downward direction, and their features were pale. As they moved, each and every step that they took was carefully observed and analyzed. Their bravery and dignity were admired by the entire globe. Spencer, however, observed something different. Two children were entrusted with a responsibility that they had no right to be granted in the first place. The journey from Kensington Palace to Westminster Abbey ended up being a lengthy and unpleasant one. The crowd was filled with the sound of sobbing, but the guys did not show any signs of breaking down. They were able to keep themselves together to the point where they did not shed a single tear in public. In a subsequent statement, Harry referred to it as numb, as if his feelings had completely disconnected from him. The entire occurrence seemed bizarre to him, as if it were something that was taking place to another person. The death of Spencer's sister was not the only thing that caused him anguish on that particular day. It was more about being a witness to what he perceived to be an injustice. He had been unsuccessful in his efforts to shield his nephews from this time onwards, and he was aware that there was nothing else he could do but walk beside them at this point. The next thing that Spencer did, however, rendered everyone stunned: the opening of the speech and Spencer's speech. For the purpose of delivering his eulogy, Spencer took the podium inside Westminster Abbey while the entire world watched. Exactly what he would say was a mystery to everyone. What came next was one of the most powerful and forthright speeches that has ever been delivered at a royal burial. He did not mention Diana at any point. In her stead, he spoke. As far as Spencer was concerned, his sister was the most sought-after individual in the modern era. He pointed the finger of blame at the institutions and the media for their failure to safeguard her. His comments were so profound that the royal family listened attentively as he talked. The Queen did not show any signs of emotion. Despite the fact that Prince Charles did not show any reaction, the rest of the world was able to hear exactly what Spencer mentioned. After that, the event that caused headlines all around the world occurred immediately. The promise made by Spencer was that Diana's biological family, and not the Windsors, would watch over and direct William and Harry at all times. It was a proclamation that Diana's sons would not be left totally in the jurisdiction of the royal family, which was a direct challenge to the power of the royal family. And applause was the response, which is something that is not typically seen at a royal function. A spontaneous round of applause broke out among the audience that had gathered inside the Abbey, which included dignitaries, celebrities, and representatives of political groups. When it came to funerals, it was unheard of. However, at that precise time, Spencer said what many people were feeling. Diana had been treated unfairly, and at long last, someone was bringing it to her attention. Fortunately, Spencer's plans did not turn out to be successful in the end. The words that Spencer spoke were quite strong. Nonetheless, he would later concede that it was impossible to uphold that vow. Both William and Harry were already thoroughly ingrained in the social structure of the royal family. He could not take them from it or personally raise them as Diana might have desired. There was no way he could do either of those things.
It was so confusing because it was so put a thread through it. I didn't know what it was.
There was nothing he could do to change the fact that the monarchy was in charge of their future. To be sure, that is not everything. Right now, we are only at the beginning of the story. After a number of years had passed, Prince Harry would freely discuss the profound impact that funeral had given him. It was accepted by him that in modern society, something like that would never be permitted to take place with children who were grieving. The influence of Diana had been largely responsible for the changes that had taken place in the world, but no one had fought hard enough to halt them back then. Throughout his life, Charles Spencer has recalled the funeral procession as one of the most excruciating experiences he has ever had. Since that day, he has never wavered from his position or altered his opinion that the events that transpired with William and Harry were inappropriate. It was a moment that would forever be remembered by the lads, and it was this moment that would eventually cause Harry to rethink all that he had ever believed about the institution he was born into. On the other hand, the funeral itself was merely the public farewell. During the days preceding it, there was a lot of confusion, stillness, and dissatisfaction. The entire world was in mourning, but the royal family chose to remain silent. The fury became even more intense as a result of their response, or lack thereof. And this is where we get to the next point. The moment that Charles Spencer was first shown the heartbreaking phone call, the manner in which the royal family responded behind closed doors, and the pandemonium that ensued in the immediate wake of Diana's passing are all topics that will be discussed. In the early hours of August 31st, 1997, the globe underwent a profound transformation. Let us go back to that moment. A black Mercedes that was carrying Princess Diana was involved in an accident in a tunnel in Paris when she was attempting to evade paparazzi. The impact was so severe that the car was shattered into pieces like a tin can. When she was inside, Diana was barely alive, but still alive. The word quickly spread, initially manifesting itself as murmurs and later as breaking headlines. There was no one on the planet who was aware of the fact that the most renowned woman on the planet will be gone in a matter of hours. It was officially confirmed that Diana, Princess of Wales, had passed away when the news finally arrived. Nevertheless, a different kind of turmoil was taking place behind the scenes before the general public even had a chance to learn what had taken place. Charles Spencer, Diana's brother, was sound asleep in South Africa when the phone rang. He was located a couple of miles away. The phone call was one that he would never forget. A voice that was calm but forceful could be heard on the other end. Diana was involved in an automobile accident in Paris at the time. There is no further information available regarding her injuries. While sitting up in bed, Spencer's thoughts were racing. Was it a mistake? He was well aware of the manner in which the press harassed her and continuously pursued her. This time, had they pushed her to her breaking point? His heart was beating as he waited for more information. After a few minutes, an hour had passed. After that, the second call arrived. Something was different about the voice this time. Less warm. "I am sad to say that she did not make it, sir," and he was well aware of who was to blame. It is the paparazzi. During that particular evening, the same paparazzi who had harassed her for a number of years were after her vehicle. On the other hand, there was no time to mourn. The world was on the verge of making a discovery. Nothing would ever be the same again after that. As a result of the response of the royal family, you will be absolutely unable to express yourself. This is the initial response from the royal family. The reaction was instantaneous when the news of Diana's passing was broadcast on the radio and television.
French citizens, Japanese students, American soldiers, British holidaymakers. Most could not find words enough to express their feelings. The messages with the flowers were in many languages.
People sobbed their hearts out and entered the streets. Openly sobbing, grown men, women, and children buried their faces in their hands as they expressed their sorrow. Flowers were heaped up by the thousands outside of Buckingham Palace, outside of Kensington Palace, and everywhere else that Diana had ever touched. Rather than merely lamenting, it was a state of sadness. But there was a peculiar occurrence taking place at the very top. Throughout it all, the royal family maintained their silence. The absence of a public declaration and a national address lasted for a number of hours and then days. Not a single indication suggested that they were mourning alongside the people. Rather than leaving, they remained hidden from view in Balmoral Castle, which is located in Scotland. People initially thought that they were in a state of shock. On the other hand, as time went on, the silence began to feel like something else. Rather, it was apathy shown. How come the Queen did not make any kind of statement? The flag at Buckingham Palace should have been lowered to half-mast. Why was it not? The boys and Charles were not in London. What was the reason? The level of rage began to increase. The newspapers, which are often sympathetic to the monarchy, have taken a stance against them. The news headlines shouted, "Betrayal! There is mourning among your people. What are you doing? Show us that you are concerned." A sense of abandonment pervaded the UK people. They were looking at Diana, the lady they had loved, and who was the princess of the people. In addition, it appeared that the monarchy was at a loss for what to do. At the same time as the entire world was demanding answers, two young boys were quietly suffering. During the time that they were informed, William and Harry were in Balmoral. They had to be seated and given an explanation by their father, Prince Charles. An automobile accident had taken the life of their mother. No, she was not going to return. The question was posed multiple times by Harry, who was only 12 years old at the time. Is she no longer there? The day before, they had the last time they had spoken to her over the phone. In the past, it had been a brief and unremarkable chat, one of those moments where you could call me later, but now it felt intolerable. They would have communicated a great deal more if they had been aware that it was the final occasion. During those initial few days, they were shielded from the view of the general public. They chose to remain at Balmoral, where they were surrounded by their father, grandmother, and members of a royal family that is not known for displaying affection. Harry would subsequently admit that he had experienced feelings of confusion. There was complete silence within the palace, despite the fact that the entire world was crying. There was no mention of Diana at all. No one was able to provide them with the necessary solace. To be sure, that is not everything. Outside, the royal family continued to face increasing amounts of pressure. In the end, the Queen was given no other option but to take action. To ignore the fury would have been a mistake. She finally addressed the public on September 5th, which was 5 days after Diana had passed away. She spoke about a remarkable human being as she was sitting in front of the cameras, and she commended Diana for being a loving mother. She expressed her understanding of the people's sadness and acknowledged that they had lost someone who could not be replaced. Was it, however, too late? It is true for many. The damage had already been done by that point. At a moment when warmth was required the most, the monarchy appeared to be out of touch, chilly, and distant. After Diana's passing, it became clear that there was a disconnect between the royal institution and the people it was supposed to serve. There was still a feeling of anger even after the Queen's address. For many years, people had been able to observe the distinction between Diana and the royal family. She embodied the qualities of being open and human. And the monarchy? They were something other, inaccessible and detached from the world. And yet, in the wake of her passing, that chasm has never been more evident than it is now. Although Diana had passed away, her influence was not yet extinguished. Not only was the burial approaching, but it also brought with it one of the most agonizing and contentious moments in the history of the royal family: the choice to have William and Harry walk behind her coffin. It would be a moment that would alter them on a permanent basis. It is important to keep in mind that we indicated previously that that was a decision that was not accepted by everyone. In particular, there was one man who campaigned to put a stop to it. It was Charles Spencer. It was a conflict that had far-reaching consequences, and Spencer's efforts to prevent the lads from getting close to the coffin continued, even after and there is where we head next. The conflict that transpired between Charles Spencer and the royal family regarding the fate of two youngsters who were grieving. The situation is going to take a significant turn for the better. Continue to be with us. In his opinion, the royal family was a failure in Diana's life and death, and Charles Spencer never remained mute about his feelings regarding this. As soon as she tied the knot with Prince Charles, she was thrust into a system that did not provide her with any form of protection. Spencer was under the impression that the same system continued to let her down even after she had passed away. More than just a personal rage, he was angry. It was open to the public. You are mistaken if you believe that the event came to a close after the burial. In interviews that he gave over the years, Spencer made it clear that he would not allow people to forget the misery that his sister had to go through. Spencer never failed to make one point: the family never really recognized Diana as a member of the family. She had gone from being a young woman who was full of life and was 19 years old to being a woman who was locked in a cold and harsh institution. It was required of her to smile, to obey the rules, and to remain oblivious to her misery. To add insult to injury, her marriage to Charles ended in divorce, which further distanced her from him. On multiple occasions, Spencer asserted that Diana had been expelled and that she had been forced to endure a life of persistent harassment from the media without the protection that she ought to have received. In spite of the fact that she had divorced, she continued to be the mother of the future king. Undoubtedly, she remained among the most well-known women in the entire world. Despite this, the royal family chose to keep their distance from her rather than ensure her safety. In response to this, Spencer was outraged. In a number of interviews, he made it abundantly plain that they were aware that the media was looking for her. He was aware that she did not have adequate security. Still, they did not take any action. What is the end result? A woman who was always on the move is described. And on August 31st, 1997, she was finally able to catch up with her running. It was Spencer's statement at Diana's burial that, if there was one moment that exemplified Spencer's rage, it was that moment. When he was standing in front of a nation that was in mourning, he did not hold back. Taking the media to task for pursuing his sister to her death, he criticized them. In addition to that, he communicated with the royal family in a direct manner. It was his assertion that Diana did not require a royal title in order to continue to produce her own unique brand of magic. The statement was quite audacious. To put it another way, Diana's power had never originated from the position of ruler. She had been the source of it. They were unnecessary for her. They were in need of her. The final statement made by Spencer, however, was what everyone found shocking. He assured her that her sons, William and Harry, would be shielded from the same situation that had befallen her. Furthermore, he stated that the blood family of Harry and William would do everything in their power to ensure that the royal family would continue to guide these extraordinary young men in a way that was both inventive and kind. A lot of people interpreted this as an assault on the royal family. It was made quite apparent by Spencer. "You did not succeed, Diana. We will not allow you to forget about her sons, though." The response was really explosive. As she sat in Westminster Abbey, the Queen maintained a stony expression. There was no applause from the royal family. How could they possibly do that? Nevertheless, the people did it outside. Cheers could be heard across the streets of London. What millions of people were thinking was expressed by Spencer. The monarchy was being called out for the very first time, and this time it was not in a whisper, but rather in front of the entire world. Spencer's words were never tempered in any way. Additionally, in subsequent interviews, he referred to the manner in which the royal family dealt with Diana as brutal. According to him, they had utilized her when they required her and discarded her when they did not require her. Additionally, he disclosed that she had approached him in a state of extreme anguish. During the call, she had shed tears as she expressed her feelings of isolation, being confined, and the fact that no one was paying attention to her. Despite this, there was no difference. The criticism that he leveled on the royal family continues to be one of the most straightforward and unfiltered accounts of Diana's existence at the palace. He never attempted to gloss over reality. He never made an effort to maintain peace, because in his opinion, Diana's narrative was about more than just a tragic event. Injustice was the topic at hand. Moreover, she was not the only victim of that injustice. It continued with her sons, William and Harry, particularly Harry, who subsequently stated that he felt the same lack of protection as his mother had. The next thing you are going to see is how Harry, many years later, would take the fight even farther by fully distancing himself from the royal family. Harry's struggle against the established order. Not only did Spencer point the finger at the establishment, he pointed the finger at particular individuals. It was his belief that people who were inside the palace desired for Diana to be broken. There were others who disapproved of her popularity and the fact that she diverted a great deal of attention away from the other members of the royal family. According to Spencer, Diana was the most sought-after individual of the contemporary era, as said in one of his interviews, and it was up to her to deal with that on her own. Even after Diana's passing, Spencer continued to believe that the royal family had let her down once more. He felt a great deal of annoyance with the manner in which her burial was handled. The idea of letting William and Harry, who were only 15 and 12 years old at the time, walk behind her coffin in front of millions of people was never acceptable to him. His opinion was that it was cruel. In response, Spencer put up a fight. He had a disagreement with officials from the palace, arguing that the boys were too young. However, in the end, his complaints were useless and irrelevant. The choice has been concluded. Harry eventually recognized that it had a traumatic effect on him many years later. I concur with William that it is something that no child should be forced to perform. Indeed, Spencer had been correct. The royal family, however, had not heeded to this advice once more. In spite of the passage of time, Spencer's comments continue to reverberate. Diana's life did not come to an end when she passed away. Her sons, particularly Harry, were the beneficiaries of this legacy. Over the course of several years, Charles Spencer had been vocal about the mistreatment of Diana by the facility. Harry, however, would ultimately decide to take action. As a result of his refusal to allow history to repeat itself, he would disengage. A comparison between Harry and his mother has been made ever since Harry was a young child. It was his warmth, his rebellious streak, and most importantly, his profound unease with the royal system that he had. Never in his life did he forget how she was handled. He recalled the press harassing her, the way she was abandoned to struggle on her own, and the most excruciating aspect of the situation was how she vanished in an instant, being pursued to her death by the very media that she had spent years attempting to evade. That traumatic experience molded him. He later revealed in interviews that whenever he saw paparazzi cameras flashing, it brought him back to that night in 1997. He said that it was exactly the same. Not only did he see himself repeating the same mistakes, but he also witnessed his wife, Meghan, doing the same thing. At that very moment, he carried out an action that caused the entire royal family to be shaken. As he departed, he witnessed Meghan being subjected to the same treatment that Diana had been dealt. The headlines are negative: attempts to attack from within the palace, a deficiency in assistance. Also, Meghan was having a difficult time, just like Diana. He was adamant about not allowing it to return. During one of the most emotional interviews he has ever given, he stated that he witnessed history being repeated, as well as being powerless to stop it. But in contrast to Diana, he was able to flee. That is exactly what he did. By the year 2020, Harry and Meghan had already made up their minds to leave the royal family. After moving to the United States, they severed all official links with the organization that had been the defining force in their life. The action was the most audacious one that any royal had ever made in the contemporary era. For Harry, however, it was not an act of defiance. Survival was the goal. Even in his departure, Harry was remaining true to the road that his mother had taken. In the years leading up to her passing, Diana had made several attempts to escape. It was after she had separated herself from the monarchy, discovered a new life outside of royal obligations, and began to speak out about the challenges she had been facing. It was her who was redefining what it meant to be a royal. It was now time for Harry to complete what she had begun. In addition, Charles Spencer, the one who had exerted a great deal of effort to protect the legacy of his sister, secretly supported Harry's decision. Although he did not engage in public pronouncements, it was evident that he comprehended the reasons behind Harry's departure. When all was said and done, he had spent decades criticizing the very system that Harry was just now rejecting. We appreciate you still being here with us. In your opinion, do you believe that Spencer might have been more helpful to Harry and William? In the comment box, please share your thoughts and opinions with us. If you found the video entertaining, please give it a like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel. In addition, if you click on the video that is displayed on your screen, you will truly love it.